Michael Carter had learned to survive on very little. But that winter in Chicago tested even his limits. The wind cut through the streets like broken glass, and the dim lights outside his small grocery store flickered as if they, too, were struggling to stay alive. Inside, the shelves were modestly stocked, and the heater hummed weakly, barely keeping the cold away. Michael, a single father who had lost his wife years ago, worked tirelessly every day, balancing bills, raising his young son, and keeping his business afloat. Life had never been easy, but he carried on with quiet determination. That night, as he locked up the store, something caught his eye across the street. A small figure sat curled up near a lamppost, barely moving at first. He thought it was just a pile of old blankets, but then he noticed a slight movement. His heart tightened against his better judgment. He crossed the empty street, his boots crunching against the icy pavement. As he got closer, he realized it was a little girl, no older than 6 or 7, shivering uncontrollably. Her clothes were thin, her face pale, and her eyes wide with fear. Looked up at him as if unsure whether to trust her run. Michael knelt down slowly. "Careful not to scare her. Hey there," he said gently, his voice soft against the howling wind. "Where are your parents?" The girl didn't answer. She simply shook her head, pulling the torn jacket tighter around herself. He could see it now. She was alone. Completely alone for a moment. Michael hesitated. He barely had enough for himself and his son. Taking responsibility for another child felt impossible. His mind raced with practical concerns, money, space-time. But then he looked into her eyes again, and all those thoughts faded beneath something stronger, compassion. He removed his own coat and wrapped it around her fragile shoulders. "You can't stay out here," he said firmly, yet kindly, without waiting for permission. He helped her to her feet. She was so light it frightened him. Slowly, he guided her across the street and into the warmth of the store. The moment the door closed behind them, the girl seemed to relax just a little, as if the world outside had finally loosened its grip on her. Inside, Michael sat her down and handed her a cup of warm soup. She hesitated at first, then began eating as if she hadn't had a proper meal in days. Watching her, Michael felt a deep ache in his chest. No child should ever have to live like this. After a few minutes, she whispered her name, Lily. It was the first word she had spoken. That night changed everything. What started as a simple act of kindness quickly became a life-altering decision. Michael contacted local services, but no family came forward. Days turned in 2 weeks, and Lily remained, despite the challenges. Michael made a choice that would define his future. He welcomed her into his home, not as a temporary responsibility, but as his own daughter. He didn't know how he would manage. But he knew one thing for certain. He couldn't turn his back on her. In that quiet, struggling household, something powerful began to grow. Not just survival, but hope. 15 years later, the courtroom in downtown Chicago was packed with tension. Thick enough to suffocate. Michael Carter stood at the defense table, his hands clasped tightly, his face lined with stress that no amount of success could erase. The empire he had spent years building, from that tiny grocery store into a respected chain of businesses, was now on the verge of collapse. False accusations of fraud, fabricated documents, and powerful rivals had all converged into one devastating legal battle. The prosecution painted him as a manipulator, a man who had built his success on deception. Each word felt like a hammer, striking the foundation of everything he had worked for. Michael's lawyer was struggling. Evidence kept surfacing that seemed impossible to counter. Witnesses spoke with rehearsed confidence, and the judge's patience was wearing thin. As the prosecutor delivered a final, dramatic argument, it seemed like the outcome had already been decided. Michael glanced around the courtroom, feeling an overwhelming sense of isolation. Despite all his success in that moment, he felt like the same struggling man he once was, alone, uncertain and on the brink of losing everything. Just as the judge prepared to announce a preliminary decision, the heavy courtroom doors swung open. The sharp sound echoed through the room, drawing every eye toward the entrance. A young woman stepped inside with calm authority, her posture confident, her expression focused. She wore a sleek black suit, her presence commanding immediate attention. For a brief second, Michael didn't recognize her. But then their eyes met and everything stopped. "Your Honor, I request permission to present new evidence," she said, her voice steady, unclear. The courtroom murmured with confusion. The judge hesitated but allowed her to proceed. She walked forward with purpose, placing a file on the desk. "My name is Lily Carter," she continued, And I represent the defense. A wave of shock passed through the room. Michael's breath caught. The little girl he had once found shivering in the cold was now standing before him strong. Composed and ready to fight for him, Lily began dismantling the case, piece by piece. She presented digital records that exposed forged signatures, traced financial transactions back to Michael's competitors, and revealed inconsistencies in witness testimonies that had gone unnoticed. Her voice never wavered as she laid out the truth with precision and clarity. Every claim the prosecution had built started to crumble under the weight of real evidence. The prosecutor attempted to interrupt, but Lily was prepared. She countered every argument with facts, leaving no room for doubt. The judge leaned forward, reviewing the documents carefully, his expression shifting from skepticism to realization. The atmosphere in the courtroom changed. Completely, what once seemed like a hopeless case was now unraveling in Michael's favor. Michael watched in silence, overwhelmed, cried. Disbelief and deep emotion surged within him. He remembered that freezing night, the fragile child he had chosen to protect, without expecting anything in return. And now here she was, protecting him with everything she had become. After what felt like an eternity, the judge finally spoke. The charges were dismissed due to lack of credible evidence and clear signs of manipulation. The courtroom fell silent before erupting into whispers. Michael closed his eyes briefly, a wave of relief washing over him. When he looked at Lily again, there were tears in his eyes, not of sorrow but of gratitude. In that powerful moment he understood something deeply true. The kindness he had given years ago had returned, stronger than he ever imagined.